Did you know that just over 100 years ago, most women didn't shave their legs or underarms? In fact, the idea of shaving wasn't even on the radar for most women. But then one historical event changed everything, leading us to the beauty standards we see today. Stick around because in this video, we're diving into the fascinating history of women shaving, understand how Gillette used advertising to shame women, and reveal the huge world events that made it all happen. Hair removal may seem like a modern trend, but it actually has ancient roots. Let's rewind to the past. In ancient Egypt, body hair was often considered undesirable, and both women and men used tools made out of stones, flints, and bronze to remove it. In ancient Rome, smooth skin was associated with hygiene and ideal beauty standards. Art and sculptures from that time often depict hairless bodies. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, the emphasis on body hair removal diminished. Women would often cover their body with long sleeves, high collars, and full-length skirts, making body hair unseen and therefore not important. And even through the Victorian era, societal norms continued to favor clothing that covered women's bodies. And shaving legs and underarms wasn't part of the typical beauty routine. But things were about to change dramatically. Soon, not shaving would be considered unfeminine. I'll reveal how this shift happens in the next chapter. The turn of the 20th century brought a revolution in women's fashion. Skirts were creeping up, and by the 1910s, sleeveless and sheer dresses were all the rage. Fashion was starting to evolve, and with it, so were beauty standards. Women's underarms were suddenly more visible than ever before. And that's when companies like Gillette saw an opportunity. In 1915, they introduced the first ever razor marketed specifically to women called Miladi di Colati. This wasn't just any razor. It was designed for underarm use, which was a weird idea at the time. But here's the thing. Gillette didn't just sell the products. They sold the idea that underarm hair was unfeminine and gross. And this is a key moment where we start to see advertising influencing what's considered normal for women's bodies. Let's take a closer look at these early advertisements. They didn't talk about hygiene. Instead, they appealed to social fears. Terms like unfeminine and embarrassing were frequently used to describe body hair and plant the idea that hairless skin was associated with youth and beauty. One particularly bold ad from Harper's Bazaar in 1915 shows a woman lifting her arms to reveal smooth, bare underarms. The headline reads, "Women today must have immaculate underarms, and if she is to be unembarrassed," and I can keep going on with this headline, but you'll see that it was no longer about fashion. It was about living up to the new version of femininity. And on this next chapter, we're going to talk about that one global event that changed beauty standards forever. And wait until you see how Gillette seized on the opportunity. The real tipping point came during World War II. As the war escalated, so did the demand for nylon. Nylon stockings, which were incredibly popular in the 1930s and 40s, suddenly became sold out everywhere. Why? Because nylon was needed for military supplies like parachutes, ropes, and other war essentials. Women who were used to wearing stockings every day suddenly had bare legs out in the public more often. The exposure of bare legs led to a new focus on leg hair. What was once covered could no longer be ignored. And guess who was there to jump in and cash in? Gillette. They saw this as the perfect opportunity to launch another campaign. But this time, it was all about smooth legs. But there was another industry that helped push this leg shaving propaganda. We'll reveal that in a minute. By the 1950s, leg shaving was everywhere. Shorter skirts became fashionable and smooth legs were the must-have look. It was no longer about stockings. It was all about bare, hair-free legs being a sign of beauty.
Lady Gillette, first complete feminine shaving care. Satin smooth pre-shaving conditioner. Lady Gillette razor. Stainless blades. Luxurious after-shaving moisturizer. Free tote bag, too. does wonderful things for your legs. New Lady Gillette, only $2.98.
The crazy part, it all started because of the shortage in nylon stockings, like we mentioned, because of World War II, but Hollywood also played a key role. During the 1940s and 50s, stars like Marilyn Monroe and other leading actresses were often portrayed with beautiful legs. This helped reinforce the idea that hairless legs were part of the perfect look. By the late 1950s, shaving had become fully ingrained in Western beauty culture. Women who didn't shave were often seen as the outliers. And what's fascinating is how quickly this all happened. Just a few decades earlier, body hair was a non-issue, but thanks to a combination of changing fashion, wartime shortages, and the media, hair removal became the norm for women everywhere. But World War II didn't just change women's beauty routines, it also changed men's grooming habits. I'll reveal that in a minute, but first, let's talk about the women who didn't want to follow this leg shaving trend. Not everyone bought into these new beauty standards so easily. Throughout the years, a resistance to shaving began to emerge, with many women questioning why hair removal was suddenly expected of them. Why should body hair be considered unfeminine when just a generation before it was perfectly normal? In the 1960s and 70s, as the feminist movements gained traction, the act of not shaving became a symbol of rebellion. Prominent voices in the feminist movements began calling out the shaving industry, arguing that these standards were nothing more than just a marketing ploy designed to profit off women's insecurities. Some women embraced their natural body hair as a statement of freedom. The conversation continues in modern times. While many women still choose to shave, there is a growing movement towards body positivity and acceptance of natural body hair. Social media has given the rise to these voices advocating for the normalization of body hair in all of its forms. And now for the reveal about how World War II changed men's grooming routines. So during the war, soldiers had to shave their face so gas masks would fit them properly. But after the war, this grooming habit just became instilled with men in America, and men saw it as the new standard for looking clean, fresh, and professional.
Now that's a decent sort of a shave.
And the only way to get a decent shave, a real man shave, is with Gillette. Believe me, nothing can possibly shave as smooth, as clean, as close. Take Gillette's Super Blue Blade, the blade your face can't feel. Slip it into a precision-built Gillette razor and get the smoothest shave.
So where does this leave us today? The beauty standards that began in the early 20th century have remained the same despite the growing resistance against them. Women razors, waxing products, and laser hair removal are all multi-billion-dollar industries. We're still buying into the same beauty standards, all because of razor companies that set the rules over 100 years ago. What's even more thought-provoking is the question of how much of our beauty standards are influenced by advertising. We often think of societal norms as something natural, but in reality, many of our perceptions have been shaped by business executives who created the products we use. And here's the big question. If companies and advertisers have the power to change what we think is beautiful, what else are they influencing about our lives?